Hello, welcome to News from the Beta World. I'm Ryan Erickson. On the upper left of this screen is Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels.
Hello, Ryan. Good to see you.
And nice to see you as well after a break of far too long. And here, being subject to the power over that we are exerting on him, is Andreas Schlegel. Andreas, hello and welcome.
Hello, guys. Nice to meet you again.
Good to have you again, Andreas.
Good
Yeah,
to be here with you. Yeah. Well, the topic for today, for those of you who just happen to be wandering into this live stream in your scrolling adventures, is the book, the topic of the new book. What would Ernst Weichselbaum do? Yeah, newly released. You can buy it now today from Amazon, and more importantly, from the Red 42 shop. Yes.
From everywhere, really, right?
Everywhere and anywhere. And again, today is talking about the work of Weichselbaum. However much that gets into the book and that process, we'll see. And certainly into each of our various curiosities and passion about what Ernst has done and brought to the practice of time-oriented work. So, cool. What would either of you like to start with? Why was it important to write this book, and why now, and who should care about it?
Maybe I should say a few words about that, Andreas, right? Maybe I go first.
You're up.
So I had to, well, first of all, this is the fourth book in a series of so far 4 books. It all started with this one 3 years ago, What Would Deming Do? And then came What Would Drucker Do? With quotes of Peter Drucker. And then last year, What Would Ono-san, Taiichi Ono, do? So these were the 3 first books. And now what's here is What Would Ernst Weichselbaum Do? This book was published in April. So just 2 or 3 weeks ago. All these 4 books are published by BetaCodex Press, our own publisher. And yeah, they're all book of quotes. So who wrote the book? Ernst Weichselbaum himself wrote it all, but he passed away a year and a half ago. So somebody had to take on the work of editing it in English. And this is, in a way, an adoption of a German book that was published 5 or 6 years ago, at the height of the COVID pandemic, really. A book. This was the first book in German by Ernst Weichselbaum, and I now adopted this into this book of quotes, which comes even more handy. But it has the main contents of the other book, and it also has the main contents of the work of the master, Ernst Weichselbaum. So he's not as well known as W. Edwards Deming or Peter Drucker, who the first books of quotes in this series were about, but he deserves worldwide recognition. So this was long overdue. I long wanted to publish this book, and now was the time. So who is this guy? He passed away 80 years old a year and a half ago. Andreas and we met him personally. I mean, we were acquaintances of his. I edited the German-speaking book with him, and I worked a little bit more with him. And Andreas met him a couple of times. I remember also one time we went, Andreas and I went to Ernst's house in Austria together and had dinner with him. That was right after the publication of the German book, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I can say that Andreas is an expert on all things time orientation and Ernst Weichselbaum. So I thought it would be wise to have Andreas with us today discussing this book. What I can say is this book has 160 quotes, or a little bit more than 160 quotes, and it covers the whole scope of Mr. Weichselbaum's work. You know, not just time orientation specifically, but also the distinction between wanting becoming being. That's very creation of his, the model of seam organization, the concept of the okay point, about how to let capacity swing. So it's a book that's rich. It has several chapters that detail these concepts. So it's sorted by topics. And yeah, what can I say? Ernst Weichselbaum, Ryan, you and I, we have talked to several of our heroes already, and one of my heroes of the last couple of years, Alan Bludorn, we talked with him about time-oriented organizing. Just to give an example, but Ernst Weichselbaum, he really created a new way of organizing entire companies, entire organizations around time instead of organizing around capacity. And his work is so far out, it's so progressive that, it deserved this book. And now we need to talk about it. I hope it will be an interesting conversation about these concepts.
Well, absolutely. So the third member of the trio here, Andreas, I'd love to hear the entry of you into this process and the writing process, and what has come for you.
Yeah. So from my point of view, let's say that book is really also kind of a requirement for everyone who's not able or cannot really speak German or understand German. Because it's very special, the language that Ernst used. It's a kind of very specific way in thinking and talking about all the time-oriented stuff. It's very dense. It was also very interesting that when I had the chance to talk to him, that he actually talked like you can read it in the book. Yeah, it's not that you need to rework a lot of his things he said to you. You can just write in parallel as he talked, and it was already print ready. So it's a very different quality and a very special level in that book and that content, and the content that Ernst, let's say, created for the world. And it's not only from the conceptual point of view, it's also very specific language. It's a special philosophy, and that makes it very, very special also for me. That I just said it to Niels before we started, that I just took before the book and started to read some quotes again. And every time when I just read one quote, there is opening just its own world where you can think about the different perspectives. There's so much density in just 1, 2, 3, 4 words of him. So that's very special. I really loved it. And it was a really great honor for me also to meet him. And of course it's also fun and very interesting, and as Niels just said, progressive to take that a lot of insights he just gained through his life and through his business life. And I think it's really worth to now also have it in English for all the English speaking people, and to make his thoughts more relevant in the world, let's say it like this.
I have to say also, and this is great, because Niels, I think I have been bugging you for a couple of years about when are you going to bring the German Wiechselbaum book into English.
Yes.
And I got the sense that, well, this doesn't really, what is the title of the book, the first book translated?
The book in German, the title would be There is a better company hidden in every company, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
There is a better company hidden in every company.
And that wasn't the title of this new book. I'm like, well, are you rewriting that? And then I read the book. I was like, this has to be very much the theme and content from that first book coming forward. And that was for me very enlightening, because we talked about many of the topics, this idea of what exists between the cells in a cell structure, what how do people relate to one another, and what is the company within a company, because you've talked about that on occasion, and it was nice to see that in the book as it came.
Yes, there were several options of what to do with let's say Andreas and I, we are kind of guardians of the Wiechselbaum heritage, I would say, because we chose to be that. I, as a co-editor of the book, of the Wiechselbaum book in German, I felt that, okay, I somehow had to bring this to English, but I didn't want to produce the same book in English, let's say. I thought, okay, I must do this in an even catchier way. This is a very compact volume, by the way. But I thought, okay, there must be a way that's even catchier, even more reduced. And when I started this What Would Do series a few years back, I imagined, okay, maybe that's a format, just reduce Ernst Weichselbaum's work to quotes. And as well, Andreas already hinted at it, this man, Ernst, he talked in a very peculiar way, like it was print-like that he talked, very specific, in a very specific vocabulary, and to bring this to English was a little bit of work. It wasn't so easy. So of course I used the translation tool DeepL to generate a rough translation, but that wasn't enough. So I really had to always recover the style of the original quotes and recreate the specific vocabulary. Ernst created words like seam organization, right? Yeah. Instead of an interface organization, there is a seam organization that's being talked about in the Wiechselbaum system. So all this kind of vocabulary had to be. I struggled with the translation. Yeah, but then last year I started translating a few quotes of Ernst Weichselbaum into English for the BetaCodex network research papers that I published. Yeah. The first one was time-oriented work systems. So for that, I started translating 20, 30 quotes or so. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, yeah, I can do it. I can get it done. And it ended up a few weeks of work of putting this together. And it was fun also, this rediscovering the concepts once again. And now making them available to literally everyone on the planet. And as Andreas said, all these quotes are very. None of them is obvious, Ernst was a master of the non-obvious. So each of the quotes is a kick in the butt, or a kick in the stomach, or whatever, a kick in the brain, It makes you think. For example, a couple of weeks, I posted one of the quotes from the book, and somebody answered, this is total nonsense. That's a typical reaction. Total nonsense. It doesn't make any sense on any level. And so the person just hadn't even read the whole quote, hadn't grasped the meaning. And once you grasp it, it's like a shock, because once you really grasp the quote. Well, you corrected, you proofread the book, Ryan. Didn't you feel the same?
I did, absolutely.
The quotes, you corrected them, and I understood that you hadn't understood the quote. So I ignored your suggestion for improvement.
Yeah, you only did a few times.
It happens only two or three quotes. The others, you grasped them and you made excellent corrections. Thank you for the proofreading.
No problem.
But you the impact, right?
Pardon?
You must have sensed the impact of the meaning of every quote. There's a world in every quote.
There's a world in every quote. I think also this book is very different from the other books in that there are so many very long quotes in it that really go very deep. That they ask something of you to engage with them. It's like, what is he really talking about? On that quote. So I want to pause for a second. We actually already have our first question. I think it's a really interesting one.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So what was the question Ernst was living? What kept him up at night, and what makes him so relevant today? I think that's a wonderful question.
It's a very good question. Thank you, LinkedIn user.
That's a whole other thing. I'll find his name in here too. So put him in.
Ernst, he tried to figure out. Andreas, you can add to that. And there are many ways of explaining what was the guy up to. There is an origin story that Ernst liked to tell he worked at Ernst at the time in the 1970s. He started, or at the end of the 1960s even, he started working at an office furniture manufacturer called Bene. The company still exists in Austria. So Ernst was working at Bene, and he became a general manager at the company after a while. So he rose the ranks within the company. And of course, they always had they had all kinds of fulfillment problems, and I think they once had an order from a local bank, and they said something like, okay, we have to get this new office furniture for our branch until the World Savings Day. I'm not sure if that exists international, but it is a thing in Austria and in Germany, the World Savings Day. So and he knew that they couldn't deliver the furniture. So Ernst suggested to this client, to this branch manager, well, maybe you should move the World Savings Date so that we can deliver on time. And that wasn't a good idea. I think the feedback must have been bad. So he noticed that punctuality was a thing, and that delivering on time, delivering fast, having short throughput time, the shortest possible cycle times, that made him think, how to be more punctual, how to be more reliable in delivery, how to reduce the time between the order and the delivery of the product. And that is the origin story, really, because Ernst came up with a way of fixing delivery time. So what was the question Ernst was living of? How to make organizations fluctuate with market demand, how to make organizations swing, how to make them truly adaptive to demand. And that, he figured it all out. First at Bene in the 1980s, and then at the beginning of the 1990s, in 1993, I think, Ernst became a consultant, and he worked as a consultant for more than 30 years, helping, I think, 140 companies, all in all, to adopt this same system. You could say this is a lean approach. It is a lean approach that is not like Toyota's, but is for, let's say, low volume, high mix organizations in peculiar. He consulted mostly to smaller, mid-sized organizations, not so much to large ones. I think the biggest client he had maybe 2,000 employees. And he always took this approach to the entire organization. So the idea was to let the organization swing with demand, and that had led him to question times, the question of time. He took a constructivist approach to organizing, and he figured out all the aspects. Different than most lean approaches, he wanted to figure out everything about how to make organizations lean and time-oriented and truly agile. Maybe, Andreas, what would be your response to this excellent question? If we go back, what was the question Ernst was living?
Yeah, I think actually you already mentioned a lot of things. So maybe I just looked a little bit in the book, and I think maybe one quote from him can help here. So he said, a company organized according to time orientation does not actually sell products, but robust processes. And maybe that is also kind of a good summary. So what was actually his goal? Yeah, that he understood in our today's world with a lot of pressure, with you every time have a competitor. So there is no really any market where you are the only one. So what can make the difference? And the difference can be you sell really robust processes. So you're actually punctual. You have that kind of system that swings and that just is, let's say, able to deliver every time on time. Yeah.
Yes. As you were talking, I think I should add that when I started working more closely with Ernst, I started calling him the Austrian Deming. And the thing that you just explained, Andreas, is very related to it. Could be something Deming would have said. He didn't say the same thing. An organization doesn't sell products in the end, or a time-oriented organization or an agile or lean organization doesn't sell products or services in the end it sells robust processes. It is a very Demingese thing to say, and I also can recommend to compare the works, these works of W. Edwards Deming and Ernst Weichselbaum. They are really related, but one could say that there is a distinction between the two. Let me put it like this. I think Ernst Weichselbaum solved a few things that W. Edwards Deming wouldn't have thought of. But the overall philosophy is the same. You shouldn't compete on price. You should compete on cost and quality. You should compete on robustness and reliability, and, as Ernst made very explicit, punctuality. So Ernst Weichselbaum pioneered a wonderful concept that I think explains well how his approach worked. When one of the Ernst Weichselbaum's clients, Andreas and we went there. I went there a couple of times. Andreas went there once. Blaha Office, another office manufacturer in Austria, a wonderful company, and Franz Blaha is something like a friend of mine as well, or has become a friend of mine in the meanwhile. And at Blaha, where it was probably one of Ernst's first consulting clients, so he must have done the transformation with them in the 1990s. What they have done for 30 years or so at Blaha is that when you order a piece of furniture or a large volume of furniture, you know that it will be delivered on the 9th day. So delivery will always be on the 9th day, not later, not sooner. Delivery time is guaranteed, and the capacity of the company must swing accordingly. So if you order there from the company, all the processes are designed to function so that delivery will be on the 9th day. And that Ernst Weichselbaum applied that to all kinds of businesses, like medical devices. I got to know another Weichselbaum client. They deliver after 24 hours. They ship after 24 hours. So the customer places the order. After 24 hours, there's delivery. Or another company, very large products, mounted cranes built on trucks. Delivery would be on the 19th day. So, which is very fast, and it doesn't mean from stock, from inventory, but to produce the product within that time and ship it reliably on that day, after either 24 hours or after 9 days or whatever, depending on the product, on the 5th day or so, but always to have that rhythm in the company. And that means having these kind of daily rhythms within the organization as well. The company swings according to demand, very reliable, very sturdy rhythm in a way. And that's a wonderful concept to run a company, because it makes, it reduces inventory to zero. Course, ideally and usually, it makes relationships within the organization very, very steady, very reliable, very rhythmic, and allows to adopt a different way of thinking about capacity, about punctuality, about price, about how to sell, how to deliver.
I want to go back to the rhythm thing for just a second. Is in that rhythm that happens, it is oftentimes is arbitrary. In some other ways of organizing, that it's just, these are the rules. You must meet every day. You must meet every day at this time, just because we're adopting some other software development kind of system that's named after a thing in rugby. But that it becomes a mandate, and it becomes a forced thing, and it doesn't serve a purpose. From what you're describing to me about this daily rhythm, it feels to me, in hearing that the distinction is that rhythm really serves a purpose, and it has a organizational purpose. And that, hey, way we do things here at Blaha is that it was this 15 days, that 9 days was, there was the one I forget what it was, but after every certain number of days, this is the rhythm of our whole organization. This is not just because you have to say what we did yesterday, what we do today, what I'm having trouble with arbitrarily. This is rhythm that has purpose. I think that's a really interesting distinction, at least it was to me.
Yes, it's not arbitrary in any way. Andreas, you would like to add something or respond to something to that distinction?
I think it's it's a perfect hit to say that this is not just for any reason. Yeah, and I think there are several good reasons for having that kind of rhythm. And maybe one thing that would fit here and is also kind of very, I would say, specific or about Ernst itself is that all his thinking was, and also he as a person, in my point of view, was really connected to the real world. Yeah, so connected to the real things. He was not kind of a thinker sitting in his office and is not connected to the world. Yeah. So he, for example, he also had a lot of inspiration from things like real world problems. Yeah. When you think about producing things that anybody of us can eat. Yeah. If you produce grain, you have to have also follow a rhythm that is our nature. Yeah. The daily rhythm is also a kind of a natural thing, of course. Yeah. Sun, the earth is rotating and whatever. All these are rhythm things. And he was very much inspired about this. And now I lost what I wanted to say, but maybe I come back.
I wanted to also,
the rhythm is the daily rhythm wasn't arbitrary at all, right? It is the most powerful rhythm that we know on Earth. Yeah. The daily rhythm, because sun rises and goes down. So we go to sleep usually once a day.
Usually.
So
except you who are on LinkedIn at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But
you wanted to relate to that or return to that thought, I think. That the work really had to take on the most powerful rhythm that we have on Earth, the daily rhythm.
Yes.
The daily rhythm is natural to us in agriculture, and it should, and also in our work lives. Ultimately, it's the most powerful rhythm. The month is not the most powerful rhythm. Even the week is not the most powerful rhythm. The most powerful rhythm is the day, and the work itself should be based on daily rhythm, which Scrum does not do. In Scrum, there are jour fixes every day, daily meetings, but the work doesn't follow that rhythm at all. The work in Scrum, to take an example of a way of organizing, concept of organizing, the sprint is a 2-weekly thing. Most companies that produce physical products still work with batches, which are arbitrary, really, or project phases are totally arbitrary, right? So Ernst said, no, the work should be divided into daily portions. That's a very important concept from Ernst Weichselbaum's work and also in this book. The daily portion, right? The work that can be done in a day. I think that's where we're heading.
Yes, so that this also that feeling as a human that okay, now my work is done for today, and tomorrow will be the next day. And that is kind of also a natural thing. And I think this is beside all the, let's say, things that this kind of organization is producing better results and whatever, it's also a very human approach that, let's say, people have the right to have that feeling every day. Okay, my work is done for today. Yeah. And it's sometimes earlier or sooner and sometimes later. But it's dependent on what actually is to do or if things are really running good. Sometimes bad. You have also a bad day, and then you need some more time to get things done. But when I'm done, and then I can leave the place, go home, and know, okay, my day's work is done. And I think that is also something that is that really makes a difference in your feeling about your work. Yeah, if you work in other systems where you actually have whatever only 10 or maybe 20 times per year such kind of a feeling, okay, now we are done, and I can go home and I know things are done. And if you organize it in a way that you will have that on a daily basis or maybe every second day, okay, now we are done, that really makes a difference for everyone in the organization. So it's also a kind of a connection to his thing where he said, okay, we should organize things that the sum of smiling somehow increases by all of the people. Yeah, I think that was not exactly what he said. It's a kind of
always act in such a way that you increase the total sum of smiles. That was it said.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal.
There it is. Yeah.
This is very close to Taiichi Ohno's thinking. Taiichi Ohno was also a great humanist in that sense. His philosophy was also very humanistically inspired. It was also always about helping people grow.
Well, and Deming too. I mean, there was
Deming,
also
same thing. It's all about joy at work. Here, when one understands who depends on me, then I may take joy in my work. That's the quote here on the back of that book. So they were all, humanists trying to make systems of work, really, really proper, fitting for human beings. Which is something that in command and control cannot exist. But the daily portion is really magic, a powerful concept that, from my knowledge, and I think I have gone deep into all this lean and time-oriented stuff. Nobody has gotten onto this idea as strongly. Alan C. Bludon, I think he grasped this idea of the power of the daily rhythm very well. But Weichselbaum also put it into practice with his clients. As Andreas said, he was a man of total practice. So, for example, imagine furniture manufacturing. How does it work? Imagine there is all the orders are structured into daily portions. That's why it's important to understand. Even a large order isn't one large order. It is several smaller orders with the same address. Yeah. So if you assume that, okay, there are no big orders that could explode the concept of the daily portion. Every large order is several small orders with coincidentally the same address. All these quotes are inside the book, of course. And then if you imagine this for a furniture manufacturer, you have certain processes. Let's say it's a sofa or sofas that you want to produce. Then you have to do the woodwork and then whatever, some other stuff. And then the upholstery, or whatever it's called in English. I'm not even sure. So all these, the most important steps of producing the furniture, they all are organized into 1 day portions as well. So the product would flow from one step to the next, maybe 4 steps or maximum 4 steps. So reliably, the daily portion would flow through these, let's say, 4 steps in 4 days, different teams that would hand over the daily portion every day to the next team. Yeah. So you would know after 4 days, every piece of furniture is ready. And then you have 2 days for preparing, packaging, logistics, and delivery on the 9th day, something like that. So in that sense, organizing a company like that, you have this continuous flow, always in daily portions with the same rhythm. You don't try to over accelerate. You don't try to. You make sure that you never leave the daily rhythm either. So things have a very natural flow. You have the same coordinating agreement meetings, let's say, that you might call it the okay point is the most important one of them. And these happen every day at the very same time. So there's a very natural rhythm to the work, a very reliable thing. And each team can do the work as they please, as long as they deliver the outcome reliable at the same time and agreed place and the agreed quality every day. All these things are explained in the book, by the way.
Absolutely. And I have to jump in when there are a couple things there's an underlying assumption that the work that can be organized like that and predicted and really that put into the sequential process and all that's complicated work. There's complicatedness to that work, that it can be defined. There's some specific endpoints to it, and there's a predictability to it that you can train that rhythm together. But and in addition to that, what I heard from there is that there are okay points along each of those places, that there's a sense of efficacy and self-efficacy, and that my day's work is done when I've reached this okay point with that. And then I'm working on this. There's another okay point. And then there's rhythm to all those things,
as they are called. Yes, Andreas is shaking his head slightly.
Well, I mean, I'm intuiting here, and I'm kind of making imposition, but
you just got the thing slightly wrong.
Oh, so please correct me, if you will.
Andreas, you almost got it wrong, but there was a slight. Let's see, Andreas, if we picked up the same thing.
Yeah, so I think at least what I understood is that there are several okay points during that flow, and that's not the case. Yeah. There's only one okay point, and for one order, or for one order, and then the time is starting your, let's say, 9-day fixed delivery time.
Mhm.
And the connections between the different, let's say, work processes or cells are that kind of seams, yeah, between the different teams that are working on the different steps, the work steps that has to be done. And that is where, for example, that so far in a dedicated state gets hand over from one team to another, and that we call a seam. It's not an interface or something like that. It's nothing where things are cut. They are seamed together. And there, these teams have a kind of agreement, yeah, a written agreement. Okay, when do we get that, in which quality and whatever, which are our agreements. And that exists for all of that relationships, yeah, between the different teams that are actually doing the work.
Yeah, the most important seam in any organization in the Wiechselbaum system is the OK point. The others are called seams or seam agreements between teams. Also, one thing that Ryan, you used a word that is dubious in the context that we are talking about. Yeah, it's beautiful that you used it. You talked, I think, about predictability. And that's not, it's a slippery slope to talk about predictability. In the Wiechselbaum system, it's not, you do not create you create predictability, but it's not about predicting. It's about making things reliable. So after when the client and the organization reach the OK point and sign the contract, nothing else can be changed. Everything is fixed. The quantity, the price, and the delivery date, everything is fixed. The quality as well, yeah. So everything is fixed, and then you do not need prediction. That's very important point. That's why I'm, hinting at it specifically about making an organization so robust through the OK point is a means to make an organization free of prediction. Let's say you don't need it. You don't need forecasting, but it's predictable that you will deliver on the 9th day.
So let me modify that based on my updated understanding of that. Would be that it's a way of not enforcing control but maintaining control, but in a way that is that we're maintaining control based on an agreement that we make. And that
vocabulary that Ernst uses is to set up a system so that it doesn't need steering or prediction, forecasting. By the way, that's vocabulary. I'm currently reading the book by Shigeo Shingo. He said the very same thing. You have to set up the system in a way that it is reliable and robust. Yeah. If you have to, Ernst Weichselbaum always said, if you have to make decisions, then you do not know what you want. If you have to steer, then you didn't set up the system properly. So set up the system properly so that the work can be free of management interference, of the day's work, the daily business can run free of managerial interference. It's a very important principle. Managers cannot steer. By the way, Friedrich Blaha, our friend from Austria, he always said this was hard for him to learn, that in the Wiechselbaum system, he cannot interfere. He cannot prioritize products over others. He cannot create push orders or urgent orders or something. The system runs by itself. There's no steering needed, just a smooth way of operating. And sometimes he has to do troubleshooting so that teams do not get hindered. But teams also take care of their capacity. Yeah, if they see, we have more work to do tomorrow than today, then we have to arrange the capacity.
Augmentation.
By all means possible. And this is really exciting stuff. What does it mean if you let capacity swing? Yeah.
Andreas, I want to hear from you for a moment and shift gears a little bit. In your work on the book and in your study there, was there a favorite quote that you keep coming back to?
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
One favorite is really hard.
Okay. So you've however many favorites you want to share that you want to pop out there.
Yeah, I think one really thing that always comes to my mind is what actually Niels just mentioned a little bit, is the willing of the entrepreneur is not replaceable by anybody else. So it's the owner or let's say the entrepreneur who has to has this wanting. Yeah, he knows or she has to know what she or he wants. I think that is a really important quote. And one thing that is also very, I think almost every week I think about this quote is, from the perspective of the old, the new is always wrong.
Yeah.
That is also one of the, I would say, most powerful quote of Ernst.
By the way, he always threw these things at you, at us, right?
Yes.
He always, like the quotes that you find in the book, Ernst really threw them at you. So you said something and he would say back one of these things. And sometimes you had to figure out, why is he saying this? It didn't seem to make a lot of sense. Of course, he was a little older at the time that we met him, 74 years in my case, or 76 when Andreas met him the first time. So you always thought, okay, is he really serious, or is he confused or whatever? Why is he saying this thing? So you would say something and he would say back to you, yeah, from the perspective of the old, the new is always wrong. And you would have to make sense. What did I say that caused this, that triggered this response?
Yes.
And it was probably that you said something dumb. You said something, within a certain frame of reference that was irrelevant or obnoxious. It's a soft and beautiful way of saying you are totally wrong. You have to think more.
Yes.
You have to reframe your beliefs. Your beliefs are wrong. But it's a nice way. From the perspective of the old, the new is always wrong. It's one of the things that I most write on social media these days as well. When somebody comes up with a dumb response, not a dumb response necessarily, but within an old framing, and I want to, you cannot say, you're thinking in an old framing and there's a better one. You have to say, from the perspective of the old, the new is really always wrong, right?
It is the quintessential argument against beta organizing. It always comes back. Well, have you tried this before?
Exactly.
Have you done this in that way?
Yes.
Well, where are the case studies that you have that someone else has been successful?
But what happens if, and it's a thing that wouldn't even happen in time orientation, or in beta. So this is a lovely response. I think this is one of the quotes that everybody should use, right?
Yeah.
The perspective of the old, the new is always wrong, right?
Yeah. Got another one, Andreas?
Think again.
I just thought about it's not really one quote, but let's say his concept. I think Niels, you mentioned it several times, that wanting, becoming, being.
Yes.
It's just 3 words, but it's so powerful because in that concept, if you really get into it and understand it step by step, you also realize what you can get rid of all the things that you're do, things like strategy planning, and so on. And I think the wanting thing we already discussed a little bit, and also the being. So the being is the actual as is, so the daily work that needs to be free of any manager intervenes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the becoming is also a very important thing here. Ernst would have said this is where the new organization, your new company, is constantly developed. Yeah. And you need to put a lot of resources constantly into the becoming. And he would also say, the today's world is not about optimization. It's about system change, constant system change. And that kind of constant system change, he proposed this concept of becoming, where he invented things like the project line, where you have a kind of a line where you have free spaces and you can have projects there, and things like that.
Let me explain it in another way. Add a way of explaining the wanting, the becoming, and the being. Ernst called them the 3 aggregate states of organizing. Yeah. So everything that happened as an organization goes through these 3 stages in a temporal fashion. So first there's wanting, then there is becoming, then there is being. Being is the daily business. Wanting is, I wish we were in that other business, in this new business, new country, whatever it is. Yeah, that's the wanting, the desire, and you want to get to make it a daily business. But what's underdeveloped in most organizations is neither the wanting and the being. The being, the daily business runs more or less, maybe in a bad way, but then there's some level of wanting, but becoming is typically underdeveloped. Well, Andreas, you just explained it. Ernst called it the project state.
Yes.
If these are the aggregate states of organizing, the wanting, everything is airy. In the becoming, it's fluent, and in the being, it becomes solid. Yeah. So the becoming is where things start to take a physical shape. You can grasp them, but you do that through projects. So on this project level of organizing, and that's not a hierarchical level, it's a stage of organizing. In the becoming stage, you need projects to make it real. So turn it into the being, the daily business of tomorrow. And that's underdeveloped. Usually not enough resources are put into the becoming. And Weichselbaum said, as a rule of thumb, you have to put 40% of your resources into the becoming. Of course, most companies aren't doing that, and even less so systematically. Most organizations are putting their managerial efforts into the being, into the daily business, and forget about the becoming. And the wanting is sloppy and lackluster. And it's called strategy, and it's totally detached from everything. So in a way, this is a concept, the wanting, becoming, being is an alternative to sloppy thinking about strategy and execution and stuff. And it's non-hierarchical, very importantly. It's temporal and non-hierarchical, so people can engage in the wanting, in the becoming, and the being. Managers should be working more in the becoming than in the being, because the being should be manager free and free of interference of steering and managers. So yeah, once you think about organizations in a time-oriented way, it becomes clear that in order to create flow in the daily business based on daily portions, daily rhythms, you should also think about creating the company, the organization of the future, and you do that through engaging the right resources to the being, to the product level. You can only do so many people, so there's something like as we call it in TOST, we call it the project drying rack, or the so you can only have so many projects because your drying rack has a limited space. You have limited capacity to engage in those things and limited attention. So yeah, Ernst beautifully solved these things, and there's an entire chapter in this book. It took me a while to figure out that there should be one section of the book about the wanting, becoming, being. Yeah. Strangely, it took me a while, even though I had edited another book in German based on ideas. It took me a while to get to this idea for the new book.
Andreas, did you want to chime in on the wanting, becoming, being anymore? I have something.
I just found one sentence.
Yes, read it out.
Maybe also very good for the actual time.
Which page?
Digitalization.
Which page?
59.
59.
Mm-hmm. Digitalization or AI does not make an organization more intelligent. Or to put it in another way, a non-intelligent organization remains stupid even with digitalization. So I think, he already got this very clear, that on the level of the organization and what you are able, that digitalization, it's just an additional round of automation, but it has nothing to do with intelligence. It's a different thing. And he also mentioned, you should always ask yourself, who does this serve? So this new trend, this new technology or whatever.
Who does this serve?
Yes.
What is it really, really good for? Who does this serve? Ernst, Andreas, you mentioned it before. He was very practically oriented, very down to earth, right? So he was like Taiichi Ono or W. Edwards Deming again, as well. They were very cautious of automatization. They always argued that first you have to have the right practice, and then you should think about automatizing to a certain degree. But Ernst also said things like, if you imagine a completely automatized factory without human beings at all, it runs automatically. That if you want that on the day that you inaugurate this kind of factory, it will already be out of date. There will be nowhere there capable of improving it. And in a complex world, of course, you need to change things constantly all the time. how will you do that if the company is supposed to be a machine? So you need to think long and hard about the level of automatization that you want. And the same today is true for AI. AI is not taking over the work or supplanting human intelligence. It is an enhancement if we let it. Andreas and I yesterday had this discussion about companies that apparently currently let AI models run with each other as in circles. They kind of give each other the AI tools give each other blowjobs all the time.
You're reminding me of a scene from Pulp Fiction, if you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So you can spend fortunes on AI like that, but you will never get a good product because they only rub each other. Once you let AIs rub each other and different algorithms or whatever projects that you have in Claude and so on, you will never get to good results because ultimately these are it's more like Elysium, exoskeleton things. That's what AI is more like. It should enhance our human capability of doing powerful stuff, which means that, of course, we have to think about how much we want to automatize. Daily portions are a great idea for that, as we discussed in the last episode of this podcast when we discussed time-oriented software development. So there are some eternal truths in this book as well about the use of technology, as are in the What Would XXXX Do book as well, I think.
So I wanted to go back a little bit to the wanting, becoming, and being, and because that also that actually shows up in a lot of places. We're talking about what is the role of the manager when you do an alpha to beta transformation. And beta and decentralization and democratization is just about getting rid of the managers, kick them out, yay, power to the people. But that's not the story. The story, again, as I understand, is that becoming is that's creating the business of the future. That is working the system, not the people. And so that is, again, it's a distinction that's very important to understand when you want to do a beta transformation, and to not to introduce fear. You want to drive the fear out of the organization. You want the people to be very understanding of what their purpose is in the organization. And so that when you talked about that to me said, well, when you're becoming, you don't just want to become everywhere and spurt yourself all over the world. You want to have some kind of robustness and consistency to the direction that's happening. So.
Sure. There must be a wanting before the becoming, otherwise it's nonsensical. The project will be nonsensical. Yeah. So the wanting must be very clear. Again, there's a quote in this book that's quoting loosely. If you have to decide, then you do not know what you really want. If you really know what you want, you don't have to decide. Everything is a consequence. Everything is a derivation or a function of the wanting, right? So what you do in the becoming, the projects that you will have running, the factory of the future, the company of the future that you build on the project level of the organization, they must be rooted in clear wanting. And where do you get the resources? Well, you only have the resources usually if you liberate the daily business, the being, from managerial interference, or as Taichi Ono would say, let the flow manage the work instead of having managers manage the flow, or something like that. That's a famous Taichi Ono quote. Maybe I misquoted, but it's something like that. Yeah, don't let managers fuck around with the daily business. They should be concerned with other stuff. Not with bugging people or steering.
Utilization and budgeting and planning and all the mechanisms.
They shouldn't do that. A great example of that is Toyota, of course. I once met a Belgian manager a manager from European headquarters of Toyota in Belgium, and he said, I have my daily work, and I also have a project. Each of us managers has to have a project on the side, like building a logistics center, which had nothing to do with his daily work, with his usual job. So you want to keep managers busy with other things in a way, with projects, instead of having them lurk around the daily business and bothering people on the shop floor or wherever. Is that correct, Andreas? Did I say anything?
Yeah, I think that is especially with that project things, and that this projects are really the important stuff where you need the really good people, and a lot of managers are good people. They have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and as Ryan just said, let them steer, or creating budget or whatever is just a waste of time and resources and so on. And to actually let that people work on the new company, the new processes, the new things that you need in the future, that is where you should focus on, definitely.
That also reminds, is there a quote about guessing? I think there are some quotes about guessing in the book, if I recall. Maybe I'm misplacing it, but that we're talking about the planning process, and if
Yes.
the managerial class gets involved in the daily work, in the being, they are guessing about what's going to happen and making assumptions about what's going to happen, because those folks in general don't have the mastery in the level of the daily work that's happening. Their mastery is in the business model creation and things like that. But you want to eliminate guessing, I would think, also.
Yes, maybe Andreas, you can look up the quote. I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of troubled that I'm currently reading books by Shigeo Shingo, who also wrote beautiful things about that. You have to get rid of estimation and planning and forecasting, because that's how does Shigeo Shingo call it? It's guesswork, or he calls it even more brutal. It's like superstitious or something like that. So Ernst's approach, maybe Andreas finds a quote in the book. Ernst's approach was to say, if you have an okay point and where the order is clear and specific and cannot be changed, then everything is agreed and everything is safe. You don't need any estimates, any projection. Then if the system is properly set up, then there is no need for prognosis or forecasting or estimation of anything, and not even planning, because things are clear, through team agreements between the teams, through the rhythm that the company is set up with. Andreas, did you find something?
Yeah, so maybe from the OK point onwards, planned data is actual data. Before the OK point lies the infinited global markets with its enormous complexity. Towards the OK point, this complexity is condensed. Before the OK point, the customer can still change everything. At the clear point, the order between the customer and the seller is clear, but changes can still be made. At the OK point, the order is secure. The rate of changes tends towards 0. So, and then you don't need any prediction.
Okay, as you might have noticed, there is an additional concept, the clear point. We didn't talk about it, but it's an additional detail. We don't have to discuss it. But it's a great example of the specific language that is introduced here, and the specific thinking, and the idea that complexity is reduced towards the OK point, and at the OK point, it reaches 0. No surprise anymore.
Well, this is a topic maybe is a little bit heretical to bring in here, but there's a lot of talk in the agile space about the cone of uncertainty. That's
the cone of sloppiness. Ernst Weichselbaum say it's the cone of amateurism. Or a cone of misunderstanding.
The cone of stupidity. How about the cone of stupidity?
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, estimation is a big topic in Agile. And planning has been a big topic of in industry. And that scheduling and planning, it's a disease. You should have coordination. Sadly, it wasn't possible to translate it well into English, as well as it sounds in German. But in the German word of scheduling is what is it, Andreas? Scheduling. It's like coordination. Koordinierung.
Disponierung.
Disponieren. Ah, yeah, disponieren. So that's the activity of scheduling. It's called disponieren in Germany.
Yes.
And disponieren, it contains the word Nieren, which is kidneys, the kidneys. And so it sounds like a kidney disease. So out of this, Ernst Weichselbaum framed this quote in a funny way, saying, "Disponieren, scheduling, is like it's like kidney disease. It hurts a lot. It doesn't make any sense. Just as koordinieren, which is coordination, it shouldn't. These things, scheduling and coordination, shouldn't exist in organization. They are more like diseases. They shall not exist." And it's a very it's even funnier in German than it is in English. Of course, I translated the quote in a way for the book, but scheduling and coordination. Whenever you hear that, or as you use this word, this kind of double-edged word, what was it? Which is close to guessing, prognosis, something.
Prediction.
Prediction, yes, exactly. So these are you don't want prediction, at least not inside the organization. You can have your predictions about the market, but you shouldn't turn this into schedule coordinating or planning. They are diseases. So that's one of the reasons why Ernst Weichselbaum, the way he found me in 2015, he found me because I was talking on Austrian radio about this book, Complexity Tools, and he then called me on my phone and said, we are so alike. We are like-minded people. We do the same things. And let me tell you what I'm doing with this and that client. And I thought a madman was calling me because it didn't make any sense for me at first. Because he was throwing these quotes at me, a lot in a phone call, And it was very odd, with his dark, somber voice. So it was very confusing at first. But and now we are here.
Yeah, well, see, there are two things. One, I had no idea that it was so recent that you had met him. I was thinking, well, did you?
Yeah, 10 years ago, 11 years.
This ago. Is maybe it was around the time Organizing for Complexity was coming around, and
yes, a year later, yes. Silke and I published another book in German, Complexity Tools. It's still not out in English, and that's when I talked about that on Austrian radio. That's how Ernst found out about my work, and then he bought the books and read them, and he first called Silke actually, and he wanted to understand why Complexity Tools was much better than Organized for Complexities. But it was hilarious. He kind of figured out from the books, he figured out what kind of person Silke must have been or was, and he wanted to verify if his ideas about her. A fascinating thing. What a beautiful mind, I can only tell you. Ernst Weichselbaum, very witty, and this wit, I tried to bring it to the English version of the book. Great thinker.
Great thinker. So there are two more things. But one is the idea of scheduling, coordinating, and planning. Those are activities that make sense at a certain level. But we can talk about the specific language of it. But what I'm getting is someone scheduling for you what they have in mind for you, or someone coordinating your work that is not you in the decision-making process. That's an illegitimate exercise of control, I would say. But we're also talking about
a question.
No, when that's a statement. That's a statement.
Not quite true then.
Well, if someone is controlling you, if I'm saying if I'm going to steer you based on my guesses and predictions and my attempt to gain control, to gain status or whatever, that is against human agency. That is a completely alpha principle, right? Yes. But the scheduling, coordination, and planning, I'll bring it back to the music thing. If we got to coordinate on what tune we're going to play. We have to. We're going to the schedule. We're going to go to the gig. We're going to play. We're going to play for this time to that time, and we have a plan for what we agree to do on the gig. So those are things, but that's not necessarily someone else telling me where to go. That's where I'm saying, well, scheduling, planning, and coordinating is a disease. Well, in a certain way it is, but in a certain way it is that kind of control. You need to have control. You're just going to be bonkers. That is a statement. Period.
Andreas, I will not respond directly. You can respond, but here's one thing that I would like to say. I once went to a New York jazz club and saw Tom Harrell on stage. Tom Harrell, one of the greatest trumpeters we have at present, and he has a serious illness, schizophrenia, I think. So he takes medication against his schizophrenia. So he's kind of, when he stood on the stage, I thought he was maybe dead or something like that at the same time. So between when he wasn't playing, he would like stand without motion, without movement on the stage and don't do anything. So, and we sat right in front of, it was at one of these small New York jazz clubs. So we were very close to him and observing him, and at the time I didn't know that he had schizophrenia, that he had this condition. So it was very odd for me. We kind of then Googled in break, we Googled it and figured it out, but it was very odd. And after a while, towards the end of the concert, we noticed how they would give signals to each other, how Tom Harrell, what he would do, and it was clear that the band had been together for years and years and years. So they didn't have to coordinate. Everything was clear between them somehow. Miles Davis also did the same thing. Very subtle signals that you need in a jazz band, in a trio especially. It's very, very subtle. So you don't really coordinate. You give each other a little signal. I love this when this happens in a jazz concert. I saw Billy Cobham recently, a couple of months ago. And there were very slight signals between Gary Husband, the keyboarder, and Billy Cobham. Very slight, So would you call that coordination? I wouldn't. But the system was set up. Andreas, let's hear what you think about this.
I would respond that this kind of, let's say, wording is completely a category of thinking that is not in, or was not in Ernst's mind. Yeah. So he just, first of all, I have to say he was a humanist, of course, and there was a kind of a baseline where you would not have to discuss with him. That's a clear baseline of his living, I would say. And he always thought about how we can design systems, processes in a way that they are let's say just running and working, and that we can have all this swing and this kind of predictability in that way that we will deliver. But on the other side, it always also has this perspective of we want to act in a way that the sum of the smiling gets bigger on all the humans. So and he would or I just found one or two quotes in parallel as you discussed. So he said, if you need to steer, then you have yourself to blame. Set up the company well, don't steer it. Or and that is, again, it's a very dense and so intelligent quote, is design the process in such a way that it does not need to be monitored. The goal is for a process to control itself. And that is on the systematic thing. And of course, he assumes that people are intelligent people, and that people are people that know how to do things, and that they can learn, and that they can interact, and that they talk to each other, and that they want to get the work done. And of course, there are problems. And I think that is, again, also a thing we discussed last time in TOST, and that's also the same general thinking in all the time-oriented systems, is the problems itself in the actual work. So if you have a problem in software development, you cannot solve a problem, or you want to produce a sofa and you have a problem that whatever, a wood is broken, you have to solve it. And the actual system is not solve the problem, but it makes it as a need that you immediately react, that you cannot postpone problems. You cannot plan to solve the problems tomorrow or next week. Let's do a project plan when we solve the actual quality problems. That would never happen in a time-oriented company. And the system is also designed in a way that these problems constantly are, let's say, monitored, or you need immediately reaction. You have to do things. You cannot postpone it. And that is really that way where you have to think in another way. If you think about that Toyota Andon line, that the complete production line is stopped just because of one error, one problem. That is really mind-blowing, because from the perspective of the old, it's completely wrong. Yeah.
Inefficient. Oh my God, you cannot stop the production line.
You're not
Machine-
authorized to do that, people.
Yes. And maybe one quote I want to add finally is about that, because we talked about that predictability and the future and whatever. He also said, having an opinion about what's coming is valuable, steering is not. So of course, thinking about what comes in the future is valuable, yeah. But that's not the same as planning, as scheduling, as that's a completely different story.
Yes, or coordinating. Those are indications of steering. And what Ernst suggested, of course, was, okay, you have the okay point. So the client has decided, the customer has decided, everything is set, and you do not need scheduling or coordination or planning, because then the seam agreements govern what's happening. And these are like contracts between the teams. So everything is clear, all information is there. There is no doubt about what should happen and what must happen to deliver on the 9th day, or whatever it is, or after 48 hours, or whatever it is, the delivery time. And the seam agreements, it's more like a watch, right? You don't have to steer the watch. It's like a machine that's set up in such a way that is so reliable that things work. And an organization should be set up like this so that you can abandon the steering. One of the chapters in the book is okay point, no steering. It goes deeper into this and how to make steering and monitoring and that kind of stuff unnecessary, dispensable, really. So that you can get rid of not only inventories, but also of steering entirely, right? It's a sophisticated way of thinking. Yeah, okay, if we set up the organization so cautiously that teams have the power to self-organize, to take any means to deliver on time, on quality, at the right point, on the next day, for example, then no, why would you steer? It's just a matter of honor to deliver on time, in quality, and at the right place every day, And that is, it's also, we adopted the same ideas for time-oriented software development, of course. It's very much the same thinking. Only the okay point is something different in Tost.
So we're kind of winding down to our normal end time, but there's one thing we didn't go into in great depth that I would like to offer in terms of the distinctions between the interfaces between cells and the seams and the action of bringing the seams together to bring the interfaces closer. That's what, when I read that part of the book, that's when it really kicked in for me about, ooh, this is cells coming together. We know we have an interface, or like an API, for example, like for between software components. But then there's this, okay, now we're bonding through that. We're binding to the data or whatever it is. That to me is that was an aha for me. So I'm curious as to what the two of you are. Do I have that right? Am I close? And B, how do you articulate seams, interfaces, and such?
Yeah. So actually, it's very interesting because I'm also a technical rooted guy. Yeah. And if you talked about, okay, things like an API, yeah, of course, it's a kind of a thing where you think about, okay, from your technical background, that could be the same. But actually, to be honest, it is not. Because that kind of technical, and you said interface, yeah, there is a clear specification, and it's a complicated thing. Yeah, you can write a specification, it's deterministic, and it runs as it runs. Nothing will change and whatever. So the difference between interface and the seam, so on the one hand, it's about communication between teams. And there are people that are communicating, so it can never be complicated. It will always be complex. Yeah, there will be surprises, and every second when people talk to each other, there will be surprises. So it's a complex way. Yeah, that's the one, let's say, part of that seam or seam. And the seam agreement. That's the agreement where the actual, let's say, parts of the work are handed over between teams. Yeah. And that when you're in a manufacturing company where you actually produce physical products, it's also a dedicated point in your factory. Yeah,
It's
where
market
a market space where the team one just puts the stuff, and the following up teams just take it from there. And in the SEAM agreement, there is noted, okay, every day at 10 a.m., whatever, that will be delivered here. And then there are quality agreements and everything that you need between the teams. And that is, for example, one of the things that also Ernst invented to get processes a kind of self-controlling way. Yeah,
Yes.
because when you have that agreement, the follow-up team just checks, okay, the work that I'm taking over, is it, for example, good? Is there a quality issue? And if there is, they will just deny to take it over. Yeah. So you will not get the problem in the next processes because they will just refuse it, and then they have to rework it or whatever. Yeah. But you have a kind of a self-control there. And I think it's one of the most powerful distinctions, yeah, the interface versus SEAM. Yeah. Because it's actually also, he mentioned it, interface is about slicing things, yeah, and SEAM is about connecting things, and that is a completely different way of thinking.
Boy, I love that. Thank you for that. Well, so Niels, I'll start with you on this one. Is there anything that you want to say about this massive, beautiful work that you've not yet had the chance to say?
People should read it. Now's the time to read it. Read it, think it through. It's a very small volume. Very cheap, I think, as well. In our store, it costs 11 euros. So it's cheap, it's handy, it's relatively easy to read, but hard to unpack. It's a lot of work to think it through, to make it appropriate, this Weichselbaum thinking. But once you have mastered it, you will see the world in another way. I think it's one of the most powerful business books that exists. What would Ernst Weichselbaum do? So I can only recommend to read the stuff. Don't believe what Andreas and I said about it. Read it yourself. And make it real in organizations. Ernst did it in 140 organizations over the course of a stellar 30-year consulting career. And I think it was so avant-garde. This thinking was so avant-garde. It was way out there, even for the lean community to understand. I think we are getting closer to. I hope this book will help to get it closer to common sense. To get closer to being the new normal, and to make it more understandable and acceptable in organizations. So, if you want to understand time orientation, if you also want to understand time-oriented software development. To help organizations become really, really lean and understand what lean is all about, what agile even is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Andreas, what about you? What did you want to say and not get the chance to do?
Yeah, I think in general, I can completely agree with Niels that, just read this book. It's a really great work of Ernst included. And I just wanted to close it here with one of these quotes of Ernst. The future only exists in the plural. At school, I learned that future is a word that only exists in the singular. That confused me even back then. The world steadfastly refuses to submit to the eccentricities of our language, of course. The future only exists in the plural. We shape futures in every moment of encounter. Organizational development or organizing a design must take this into account.
Period.
Mic drop.
Mic drop on that. Well, thanks, guys.
It's 180 pages of that.
180 pages of that. It's just
from the philosophical. This was a more philosophical to the very specific. I think there are very specific things about organizing, even sales and purchasing and so on, and production, of course, and everything in this book. Yeah,
sales. I thought sales teams should not exist. Sales is an
Certainly
illusion.
not, but we sell. Everybody sells.
Excellent.
But
Everybody
there's no
sells.
selling. There is only buying. I think we had another episode.
We did. I'm calling us back to that episode. Thank you everybody for joining, watching, being with us. And whenever you happen to be seeing this episode or a clip, comment, like, subscribe, do all the things that you're supposed to do on YouTube to help us out and bring the world of beta to everyone, everywhere, and all organizations throughout. And well, what would Ernst Weichselbaum do? Watch this again and buy the book. Buy the book. All right, folks. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. We'll see you next time.